Gamers, we're back. Today we're looking at the Forza Horizon 5 confirmed car list. This list was last updated on October 28th, and I'm recording this on November 2nd, and it's 3 days before the premium edition of the game comes out, so I'm pretty sure this is going to be the confirmed car list for launch. What better way to look at them than to put them in a spreadsheet and analyze them? What's the total number of cars in the game? 504 as of November 2nd. What's the newest car in the game? The newest car out of every single car in the game is actually the Warthog, the 2554 AMG Transport Dynamics Warthog. You may be thinking, well, what about without that car? What about the newest real car in the game? And in fact, there's 3 cars that are the newest in the game, all 2021. There's the Ford Bronco, the Mercedes AMG 1, which I believe is the cover car for the game, and the Sierra Cars RX-3, which I think is some sort of dune buggy. What's the oldest car in the game? The oldest car in the game is the 1926 Bugatti Type 35C. Would you look at that? It's almost 100 years old. It's a 95-year-old car in a Forza game. That's just awesome. What's the manufacturer with the most cars in the game? The manufacturer with the most cars in the game is Ford by a long shot. They have 56 cars in the game. Second to Ford is Porsche with 29 cars. It's almost half of what Ford has. So Ford has an insane amount of cars in the game, over 10% of all of them. What's the number of manufacturers with only one car in the game? There's actually 37 manufacturers that only have one car in the game. 37 different companies, so there are a ton of them. The most interesting thing to me is the number of cars by decade. And as we can see in this cool, nifty little histogram I made, that there's 10 cars that are 1949 or older. So basically each of these buckets on the bottom is the decade. So it's basically older than 1950. Then we have the cars from the 50s, cars from the 60s, cars from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and 2020 and above. And 2 very interesting things popped out to me. One is there's more cars from the 90s than there are from the 2000s. And I figured, why is this? There's probably a lot of JDM and tuner types of cars that are from the 1990s. So I went to go look. So there's BMWs, Hondas, a bunch of the Hoonigan cars here, Mazda, Mitsubishi, tons of Nissans, Toyotas, Volkswagens. A ton of tuner cars came out in the 90s. They have a big impact on this game's car list. The second thing I saw that I thought was super interesting was there's more cars from the 60s and the 70s than there are in the 1980s. And I felt like this was definitely because of maybe the American muscle car culture in the 60s and the 70s, and it seems like that's just about it. If we look at the list of cars from the 60s, there's a lot of Chevys, a lot of different Fords, some Mustangs, the GT40s, Shelbys, Pontiac GTO. So there's a lot of 60s muscle cars in this. Also, if you look in the 70s, a lot more Chevys, Corvette, the Chevelle, some Camaros, a Challenger, a whole bunch of Fords in here too, which is interesting. I guess there's going to be Fords in every category because there's 56 of them in the game. But it's just interesting to see a lot of the American muscle that comes out in the 60s and the 70s. So that's enough of me nerding out over the Horizon 5 car list. If you like this video, maybe give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and joining the community for the future. I'm looking forward to this game and many other racing games coming out next year, so I'll see you in the next one. Peace.